ladies and gentlemen. So today in this lesson, we are going over other efficient revision strategies, and we're specifically going into different memory techniques. Now, I hope you're enjoying the course so far, and don't forget that if you have any questions, just head over to the secret Facebook group where you can ask your questions and I'll be willing to answer there, or I'll answer in the next Facebook Live event, or I'll even make a new module or lesson to fit into this course to help you and everyone else involved. So don't forget to use that resource. So, the common misconception about memory is that people either have good memories or bad memories. Now, you need to think of your memory kind of like your muscles. And like your muscles, you can train them to be better or bigger, I guess. But you need to put in the work. You need to actively engage your brain and try and remember as much as possible. And what you'll find is that your memory gets better. And just like your muscles, if you stop training, your memory gets worse. If you stop practicing your memory techniques, your memory does get worse. So stop thinking that you have a bad memory. We can all have the potential to have good memories, right? But we do need to start now. So you're already using techniques to increase your memory and improve it dramatically just by doing the techniques I've shown you in the other videos so far. Now, what is the gold standard? And the gold standard, I would say, is understanding. When you understand something, you can actually work it out rather than having to remember everything. So if you understand why you get a certain answer or how you get to a certain answer in maths, for instance, if you understand it, you don't really need to remember anything. You don't need to remember any equations or anything like that because you understand how you get from A to B. It's the same if you understand a concept in chemistry or any sort of subject, really. If you get asked a question, you just go back to basics and you work it out through your understanding. You don't actually need to remember anything. So the real aim is to try and understand as much as possible so that you don't actually have to use your memory, and you can save that for bits that need to be remembered, things that can't really be understood. Lots of people think there's a huge secret to memory. I've already told you it's about training your mind to increase your memory. But I would say 90 to 95% of memory is down to repetition. And you'll see this when I show you the revision strategies. They are all based off of this concept. I mean, just look at them. It's got you reading, then speaking aloud, writing, reading again, then correcting. It's loads of repetition. And then I ask you to recall it. And we recall as many times as we can before the exams. That's crazy, right? You may have noticed that there's a lot of repetition, but that's because repetition is 90 to 95% of memory. You keep repeating things until it sticks in your mind. I've mentioned this briefly in one of the other lessons, but it's really important to stay learning actively rather than passively. Now, active learning is when you actively engage your brain into the learning process, where you're trying to learn things. And you do this by testing yourself. And again, I am forcing you to do this with our revision strategies, where you're recalling things without looking at the book and writing things down without looking at the book and then checking it against the textbook. It's a really good strategy, and that's what causes you to actively learn rather than passively learn. Passively learn is when you're not really engaging your brain, you're just kind of copying out the textbook or kind of listening in class but not really paying attention. You want to try and let active learning overflow into other aspects of your life, like in class, where you can actively engage with the teacher, ask questions, answer questions, listen to them, try and understand what they're saying. And you'll find by using these strategies, you will force yourself to start doing active learning in class. Just don't slip into that passive learning mindset. It's so destructive. And the way you do that is you keep testing yourself. So even when you're in class, you can say, do I really understand that? Could I explain that to someone else? Could I write all that stuff down? If not, you need to be asking questions or really trying to engage into the whole learning process. The next few bits will probably make up about 5 to 10% of memory, and it's the things that you're really struggling to remember. So you probably know about mnemonics and acronyms. And they are useful if you are struggling to remember something, but don't spend ages creating them yourself. Too many people try and get too creative and make mnemonics for everything, and then in the end they can't even remember what the mnemonics are, or even worse, they can remember the mnemonic, but they can't remember what each thing stands for. So unless you're really quick and creative, I wouldn't recommend making your own. I would just use Google. And I can show you an example, which I checked out earlier. So if you just type in, say, components of the cell, say you're struggling with that. And there's loads of different things here. Someone's asked in the student room, and something on Yahoo. There we go. Nigel can cook mouth-watering fries like Chef Christoph can do. And that's what it corresponds to. So if you were really struggling to remember the components of the cell, perhaps that would help. What you need to just remember is if you're using resources like this, you do need to check it against your textbook just to make sure that the facts they're saying are actually facts and they haven't made it up or misinterpreted it, which is more often the case. But like I said, this is for maybe 5% of the content. The rest of it you're going to be putting into your memory by doing repetition. The way you're going to improve your memory is by repeating things over and over, and it just gets stuck in your head. There's no trick, there's no secret to increasing your memory. It's just practice. And you do that with repetition and actively learning rather than passively learning. Now, if you're still struggling to remember something, you could make up a ridiculous association. Now, do you remember I said the gold standard was understanding something? Well, what if you just made up a ridiculous association so that you understood it, but it's not really an understanding, it's not real. So I can give you an example. I remember when I was struggling to remember what was in hemoglobin. So stupid, right? But the way I remembered it was Iron Man has hemoglobin, so he has, and it's iron. And there's 4 dots of iron in it because he has 4 limbs. Honestly, that's the stupid thing. And I still remember it to this day. Granted, I now remember it without doing that silly association, but I remember that association because it was so ridiculous. So you can make up silly stories. Again, don't be spending lots of time doing it. You should just think of something off the cuff and just say it out loud. It makes you laugh. You'll remember it. So when you say the fact, you say the association that goes along with it. Like I said, it's fun, it's simple, and it does work. So using ridiculous associations is another technique you can use. So again, we're talking only about 5%. I know people get really hung up on these memory techniques. I want you to remember, pardon the pun, that 90 to 95% of it is all about repetition. I've repeated that quite a lot, haven't I? But it is, and I'm really trying to stress that point. And these things are just for the bits you're struggling to remember. So you've got mnemonics, you've got the silly associations, and then for those really stubborn facts that you just can't remember, like words or vocab, write it on a little post-it note. Stick it to your bedroom door, and every time you use that door, you have to recall it. And once you can do it with no problem at all, you can remove the post-it note and replace it with something else. Now, you can either throw that post-it note away, or what I did is I had a rough piece of paper and I stuck all the old post-it notes onto it. And when I wasn't doing anything, I had nothing scheduled, and I wanted to boost my confidence, I'd get that rough piece of paper out and I would try and recall all the facts. I'd have a look at them and see if I could recall. And that's a really good way of boosting your confidence and just to really reinforce that you know these stubborn facts. So these are the memorization techniques. Like I've said lots of times, 90 to 95% is just repetition, and I'm forcing you to do that with the way we're studying. There's a method behind my madness, as people would say. The rest of it is just for those facts that you struggle to remember, and you don't want to waste too much time trying to do it. You just do these simple memorization techniques and you'll be good to go. So use these techniques within your revision, and I'll catch you guys in the next module.